Hello and welcome to A Spirited Debate. I'm Lauren Green. It's being called the greatest humanitarian crisis since World War II, the genocide and expulsion of religious minorities, particularly Christians, in the Middle East. Right now, leading experts are gathering at the United Nations in New York to examine and help bring an end to the persecution of Christians worldwide. The Knights of Columbus is at the forefront of the movement. The Catholic Lay organization produced a nearly 300-page report for the State Department earlier in March. Andrew Walther, Vice President of the Knights of Columbus, joins me now. Welcome, Andrew.
Lauren, good to be here.
So what is going on at the UN this week?
Well, at the UN this week, today specifically, there's a session that is sponsored by the Holy See's Permanent Observer Mission to the UN, discussing religious persecution around the world. And specifically, there was a great deal of focus on the Middle East, particularly in the first panel this morning.
There's a lot of stuff going on at the UN, trying to make a worldwide support of worldwide attention to the persecution of Christians.
Well, you know, a couple of years ago, Pew put out a report on what's happening with religious persecution around the world, and of course, it's not a good thing. It's happening far more than anyone would like. And Christians are the predominant focus, according to Pew, of these kinds of attacks. And we see a microcosm of this in the Middle East, but it's also happening in other places, in Nigeria, et cetera, et cetera. There are a number of places where you see this kind of persecution, and the UN conference today was really to focus international attention on what's happening and what can be done to stop it.
Now, the Knights of Columbus, who had a 300-page report that you delivered to the State Department and Secretary John Kerry, what was in that report, and why create a huge document? You would think the U.S. would do it on their own.
Well, you know, senior officials at the State Department actually came to us and asked us to put that together. And the report had three basic parts. The first part was an executive summary that laid out the basic case. Then there was a legal brief that explained why this was genocide from a legal perspective. And the third part was the enormous, overwhelming evidence of what had occurred. We actually sent an attorney over there who interviewed dozens of people and came back with first-hand accounts that had never been reported before. We collected every public account we could find, and it turned out we had the names of 1,130-plus Christians who had been killed in Iraq. We had specifics on where people were killed in the Nineveh Plain, churches that were destroyed, what was happening in Aleppo, Syria, et cetera, et cetera. And I think all of this together was incredibly compelling. As it turns out, there's a low legal bar for declaring genocide. It's probable cause. And as one of our attorneys said, there's enough evidence on Facebook for probable cause. On the other hand, you know, there was 300 pages of overwhelming evidence that what was happening had the combination of intent and targeting to make this a genocidal situation, and the State Department did the right thing.
I want to say, did it become a game changer for the State Department? Because they've been criticized, Secretary Kerry had been criticized for not calling it genocide.
Well, a number of people, both in Congress and at the State Department, were very thankful for the report that we put together. We got a lot of good feedback, and a lot of people have said that they thought that it was very, very helpful.
So what should the U.S. government be doing that they're not doing yet?
Well, now that we've declared genocide, there are a number of things. I mean, obviously, we want the killing to stop. But as things progress, there are sort of short-term and long-term issues that need to be addressed. And some of these are U.S., some of these are international, UN. But together, it's really the same set of problems. As Mosul and the Nineveh Plain gets liberated, what's going to happen to the people that flee the fighting? What's going to happen to the Christians and others who owned land and houses in these areas that have now been taken over by other people? So there has to be attention given to the new refugee crisis that will occur and to the property rights of the people that were forcibly evicted. There has to be some thought given to the refugee situation as a whole. Right now, Christians and Yazidis and others are afraid to go to the UN-run camps because there are death squads in these camps that target religious minorities. The UN does not typically go out and find people in other areas that are not in the official camps. The Christians won't go to the official camps. Therefore, bureaucratically, they fall through the cracks, and you end up with situations like we have now in the U.S., where less than 3% of the people admitted are actually targeted for genocide, are actually these religious minorities, and so from Syria. So in the last year, we have less than 3% of the people admitted being genocide victims.
The Knights of Columbus have actually been funding the camps that are actually housing or harboring many of those persecuted Christians.
We have put a lot of money, especially in the Kurdistan region, into the centers and the medical clinics that are helping Christians, Yazidis, and others. I mean, no one isn't helped, but particularly the Christians have fallen through a lot of the cracks, and the Yazidis have fallen through a lot of the cracks, and we've done everything we can to help. And the third problem really is using the influence of the U.S., the UN, et cetera, to create a system in this part of the world that actually respects rights for everyone. The concepts that we have in the 14th Amendment or in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that lay out that everyone should be treated equally under the eyes of the law. As Carl Anderson, our CEO, said at the Lantos Commission, the Congressional Committee last week, and at the UN this week, the antecedent to genocide is a two-tiered system in which religious minorities are treated differently.
You mentioned Carl Anderson. He has an op-ed piece on foxnews.com. We want to direct people to that so they can get more information about what's going on.
Yes, and that's based on his UN testimony this morning, and it really lays out a case very strongly.
Andrew Walther, thank you so much for being on foxnews.com Spirited Debate. Thank you so much. And for more information, you can go to Fox News, or actually go to christiansAtRisk.org to find out more information. Also go to foxnews.com to see that article by Carl Anderson, the president of the Knights of Columbus. I'm Lauren Green, and thanks for watching A Spirited Debate.